Hey, what's up? It is the ManFUzed podcast. I am Kay Lee, your host, audio producer, sitting here with my co-host, Ben H.
What's up?
Mr. Real Estate. We have a guest in studio. His name is Jason.lyle. We're going to get with him in a second. Now, Jason has a very unique story. He entered the ministry at a pretty young age, became a minister or pastor. I'm not sure if I know the difference, if there is one. Went through some hard times and started something called AIR. It's Adventures in Recovery. And he kind of specializes on helping people who are experiencing addiction, PTSD, a bad childhood, a black storm cloud that might be following you, anything that might be holding you back in life. So on this episode, we're going to offer you some solutions to maybe fixing those things. And let's not waste any more time. Jason.lyle, welcome to the show, man.
Welcome.
Hey, man. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We are honored, and you are, as Ben just said, a distinguished gentleman.
Distinguished guest.
And a gentleman.
And a gentleman.
Yeah.
That's going a little far.
Yeah.
But I'll take it.
So
A journeyman.
Before I even go into how Jason is in our studio right now, I was on his website, adventuresinrecovery.org.
Recoveryadventures.org.
Recoveryadventures.org. Sorry, I was thinking AIR.
You're good, man. That domain
Should you
name was
redo the
taken.
intro now?
Oh, no.
Because it's not even called AIR.
No, it is.
It is.
That's like
AIR,
that's like their product is AIR,
Got it.
but their website does not reflect that because some asshole already
had AIR.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who would have thought of just buying AIR?
Adventures in Recovery is a cool name.
That's right, AIR. Yeah, but I was on his website and I saw his blog and I thought it said a lot. And I wanted to start off by reading this beautiful poem.
All right, well, hold on first, because it's all about getting fresh air. So is that the whole
Yes.
thing? You're like, AIR, we got to get air, and then Adventures in Recovery is an acronym for...
It is. And then
Air.
air is also the very essence of life.
Dang.
I mean, you just don't live
Swear
without
it's
air.
boom.
If we're going to take it that deep, we're going that deep. All right?
I'm
You ready?
ready.
Okay. Into the wild. Simply being present in nature brings us closer to ourselves. There are frequent uncomfortable circumstances that require us to feel ourselves in ways conditioned homes prevent. Bug bites, rain, heat, cold, and many other circumstances teach us control is an illusion. Most people try hard to get away from discomfort, but Jason believes healing comes from discomfort. When I head out into nature, I am stepping into a primal world where I share something with my ancestors who lived thousands of years ago. With everything I need to survive on my back, I move from one location to another using the oldest method of transportation, walking. Hiking slows life down and forces humans to be focused on the simple art of staying alive. In wilderness, things such as cooking food, gathering water, and going to the bathroom are more difficult than at home. These tasks take me out of my comfort zone and place me where healing my soul can happen. Step 1 of the 12 steps, we admit we are powerless, that our habit has whipped us. There is no more powerless feeling than a spring thunderstorm during the night. You try desperately to sleep while at the same time hoping your tent is staked out properly and there are no deadfalls close by. But it doesn't have to be as extreme as the weather. Maybe it's just the fact water is a half-mile away from camp. In nature, you just have to accept what is. You can attempt to avoid obstacles, but in the end, nature wins. There is no way to control everything in nature. There is no faucet, power outlet, thermostat, just you and what you can carry. Addiction is a place of bondage. Nature is a place of freedom. I love that right there. Addiction tries to control what is out of control, and nature shows us what is in control. Addiction destroys lives. Nature shows that in every death, there is new life. Nature teaches us the power of not being in control and to embrace and love the things we can. We celebrate when we take a creek bath or find that perfect tent spot. Nature is a place of gratitude. Nature is where AIR takes participants to look deeply into themselves and work toward being free from addiction. Nature does the work. I like that, man.
I do too. That's beautiful.
It really is. I mean, the comparisons are just vivid. I mean, and it's so true because you are alive when you are in nature. And you are like, you're a nature guy. So I find it fascinating what you do and how you use nature, and it's just commonplace in nature. I mean, so how we met was one of my mentors, one of my employers, a guy that I work for, and a partner with the ManFUzed podcast, Bert Weiss, was on an airplane. I forgot where he was going.
Ukraine with Poland.
Oh,
He was heading
okay.
south.
that's right.
That's when he was going to Poland. He's going to Poland, and Bert says it all the time when he gets on an airplane. He hates it when people talk to him, but apparently he sat down next to you, and you guys talked for a long time.
Yeah.
You were on your way to Africa.
Uganda. Yeah.
Uganda. How many times have you been to Uganda?
I have no idea, man, but quite a few. Yeah.
Wow. So you guys talked and you guys swapped numbers and have forged a relationship, and you guys have hung out and you guys kind of talk. And Bert had told Ben and I, he's like, man, you got to talk to Jason. He'd be great on your podcast. And I was like, just tell me a little bit about your story. I'm like, say no more. He sounds perfect. And so, like I said, once again, welcome. And those words you can find at recoveryadventures.org. So give us a little bit about your story, Jason. I find it fascinating. You're adopted. You were adopted.
Yep.
And how old were you when you were adopted?
21 days. I was in the foster care system for 21 days when my parents got me.
Well, that's kind of a blessing.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah.
Some people
Well, let me interrupt you there. Yeah, it is a blessing. I was a lucky kid. I mean, I got picked up by a great family and grew up in a great environment. But that's also a bit of the quandary at the same time, because people look at you and go, well, why do you feel like you have adoption issues? You know, you were adopted when you were a child, and we know now from science that, you know, the lower parts of the brain can remember things that the higher parts cannot. And so you end up with these difficult behaviors that nobody understands because they're hung up in your central nervous system or your autonomic nervous system. And so, yeah, being adopted young is a blessing, or whatever word we want to use, but it also carries with it a bit of a lens that you see the world by, that you really don't know why you do see the world by that lens.
That's an interesting take.
Yep.
Well, there's a separation anxiety too. I mean, for newborn babies, and certainly within the first few weeks,
Few hours, yeah.
within the first few hours, but for that 21-day period of time to not have your biological mother, which is what you needed as a baby, must have been devastating. I mean, in a way that's unexplainable, because as a newborn baby, you don't even know what to expect. You just know you want your mom.
You want that voice that you've been hearing for 9
You've been inside
months.
you've been growing inside of her body and so forth, and now you're all alone, effectively.
And what's really interesting about what we're talking about is that you can take kids that were born prematurely and taken from their mom for the first 2 weeks of their life and put in a little tent, you know, in that sterile environment, and they display the same exact attributes as adoptees do, because it has everything to do with, and I'm working on a book right now, and the very first chapter starts talking about imprinting folds. I worked with horses for a little while, and when a horse is first born, you want to imprint it, and what that means is you want to put your hands on it so that you are a part of that foal's imprinting.
Right.
Because we know that the very first hours of life are very impressionable.
Yes.
And it's the same thing for babies. I mean,
And
it's just
birds,
impressionable.
too. Is that why, like, birds, like, if you touch, if, like, a human scent is touched, or a hatchling or whatever, like, they'll abandon it.
That's what I understand.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the same thing. But, yeah, that imprint, and I've never really thought about that. You hear about people coming up in the foster system, 5, 6, 7 years old, where on a conscious level, they might have witnessed some bad shit, which is why they are there.
Yeah.
And it's more obvious as to why maybe they are behaving the way they are behaving because of what they've witnessed. But very rarely, I've never thought about, okay, well, you were picked up, at that early mark and brought into a good home. So it's, I would have never thought, that lack of not having that initial bond, that imprint, would cause you to maybe later in life have some issues from it, or see the world differently from it. Issues might not be the right word.
No, it's the right word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the problem comes in, and I think this is what we're talking about. Those issues seem unwarranted.
Yeah.
People will go, well, you had a great family, man. Like
You
you're
were born with a silver spoon in your mouth.
Yeah. Both you guys, I'm assuming, grew up in a traditional home, both parents, or at least one parent. If you had the first 21 days of your life erased that you didn't know anything about, Don't know what time you're born, don't know what hospital you're born in, don't know what city you're born in, don't know where you were for 21 days. It is a very untethered feeling. It's almost as if it separates you from reality.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I've never really thought about that, and that's pretty powerful. And I think that's a good thing to think about when you're dealing with somebody, because you never know what's somebody's complete story. You know, you just know that snippet that you're seeing him in, present time. And so you get into this foster family. You have a great home. Do you still are they still alive?
Oh, my mom died in 2020, and my dad is still alive. My dad is 84.
Wow.
84 years old, and just drove up to Blue Ridge last weekend to be in the mountains, and drove to Alpharetta. He lives south of Atlanta. He drove to Alpharetta Sunday night to have dinner with us, so he's still,
That's cool.
He's still driving. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I don't know if he should be or not, but he's doing it.
So when you were growing up in this family, you had a close tie to the church?
Yes. Yeah, I grew up in church. I tell everybody I had a drug problem. I got drugged to church on Sunday morning, drugged to church on Sunday night, church on Wednesday night.
Right. And when I was listening to your story, because I was listening to you have a podcast as well, and it's called
Freeology, the Freeology podcast. Yeah.
I was doing a little digging on you, wanted to, get some backstory. And it was something I heard actually on the way here to this recording that, you kind of always felt like something was left out of you. And you didn't spell it out exactly like what you were interested in, but at a young age, it almost seemed like you were looking at Playboy and Penthouse magazines or like smut magazines or something like that.
Yeah.
But and how old were you then?
8.
Nice. Okay, very cool. So, but that being in the church, different churches have different themes and beliefs on, what you'll go to hell for, what you shouldn't do, what you'll be, forgiven for, and what kind of church was it?
Baptist.
Okay. Yeah. So that's more of one of the stricter ones.
It's hardcore. I grew up in the Baptist arena as well. We're Episcopal. That was the whole idea. But I ended up in Christian school, basically, which was Baptist. So I know all about Baptists.
Okay.
And, it's not that it's a bad community. It's just, it's pretty hardcore. As a child, you are subjected to ideas of death and torture and what it's going to be like that are just a little extreme. And it honestly goes more into selling hell than heaven.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Which is interesting,
So I'll give you a little example of that. So when I was 8 years old, I went down the aisle, got saved, and that was right after I discovered pornography.
Yeah.
And so I go down the aisle, get saved, and everybody's, they baptized me a couple weeks later, and it's like, oh, you're saved now, you're saved now. But these, all this starts to progress forward a little bit, and then I get to be 13, and I'm in youth group, right? And the youth minister one night starts talking about pornography and masturbation, and he starts talking about how God hates those things, and about how they're a curse, and how if those are the things that you do, then you're probably not really saved. And so now think about this, guys.
That's harsh,
I'm 13
dude.
now. Check this out. I call my pastor.
Yeah.
Now, our church is 1,000 people, 1,500 people. I don't know how many 13-year-olds they're calling their pastor for an appointment. But I call him. I'm like, hey, I need to talk to you. Go into his office. And I just spill my guts. Right.
I'm jerking off every day of the week. I can't fucking help it. I'm going to do it right here.
I like looking at naked girls.
That's pretty close.
Yeah.
And he says to me, don't worry about it, son. You're saved. You're covered by the blood of Jesus Christ. You don't have anything to worry about. And I swear to you, I walked out of his office, and I'm walking down the hallway thinking he does not know what he's talking about.
Right.
There's no way that's right.
Yeah.
Because I knew somehow inherently inside of me that what I was doing was not doing what it was designed to do. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I somehow knew inside of me that there was, not that, and don't hear me say that it's wrong. I don't think that's wrong at all. Matter of fact, I raised both my kids knowing that it's not. And looking back on it now, I did know that there was something in me that was missing. And I was trying to put that in that place. Looking back on that now, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? I mean, if you have a young child that's looking for his mother, does it not make sense that he's going back to his mother to try to find that place? And very specifically, the place that he came from, right? So it's a epigenetic kind of idea, but it's very much there, and it's very real.
Well, when I heard that snippet...
Can I raise this up a little bit? Just a pinch.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. Okay, perfect right there.
Sorry about that.
Nope.
When I heard that, though, I'm like, okay, I did not grow up in the church. First off, my parents were, I guess, both sides before they got divorced. They were Jewish, but when I lived in New York, we had a Christmas tree. Every fucking year. Santa's fat ass came down the chimney. I didn't even know of anything that, had to do really with the Jewish religion. I really wasn't exposed to it. But that being said, I didn't grow up in any rigorous, like, oh, you're going to hell type thing. So when I hear you say that, and I'm like, that's all? I'm like, fuck. I mean, shit. I mean, as males, especially, I believe, as they start to hit prepubescence, if they decide at first they have cooties, and then before you know it, something switches, then it's like, oh, well, that chick's a little fine. Or, depending on how you're going, he's fine. I don't really know. Whatever. Right. You start to form what you're into, I would believe, what you find attractive about the same sex or the opposite sex. And looking at, naked girls on magazines and stuff, it just seems like the natural progression.
Well, because it is. It's not unnatural at all. But I think for me, it was more that what was natural was quickly becoming unnatural, and it carried on over into my teenage years. And, and when I mean unnatural, I don't mean like, bestiality and crazy shit like that.
What were you really into, Jason?
No, but it was more relational. When I was like 10 years old, I had a relationship with a 16-year-old. Nothing happened.
Right.
But she was like infatuated with me, and I was infatuated with her. And at first I was like, well, that's kind of cute. And then after about 2 months, you're like, okay, that's just weird. Right. What's going on there is just weird. But I was completely infatuated.
Of course.
And that carried on into high school, and girl after girl after girl after girl. And it just turned into a shit show after a while. So I think for me, it was less about the act of what was happening and probably more about the intention behind it. It wasn't just mindless actions. There was more to it.
What do you feel like the ultimate intention was?
To get back to my birth mother now, knowing what I know now.
And have you ever had the opportunity to meet your birth mother?
Looked for her in 2003, and she had died 1 year before.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah.
And so you had no information on your original father, your biological father?
Yeah, he had died too. So really strange. But she died with Huntington's disease. I don't know if you guys know what that is.
I've heard of it. And once you tell me, I'm going to be like, oh, yeah.
It's a version. It's presents like Parkinson's.
Okay.
But since my mother had it, I have a 50% chance of getting it. It's a half gene mutation, but I'm 52 now, so chances are it won't show up. But she died with it, her mother died with it, her uncle died with it, her grandparents died with it. Like, I mean, it was pretty bad.
That's scary.
So I find that out too, right? and I'm a pastor at the time. So dude, there's a whole story in there, and I know you're trying to.
No, this is what people really want to hear. I don't want to say we're trying to be entertained by the drama of your life, but no one wants to hear a perfect story of how your existence has been this just fantasy with no, rough spots. That really how you share and how you help others is by your story and what you've overcome and what you've experienced, in my opinion.
So check this out. We went to a church, and we had friends that went to church there, and I had went into the ministry. And
how old were you at this point?
33.
33.
And I had started seminary, and I was in seminary, and we had some friends. We had planted a church as well. It was called the Open Range Church. We met in a barn on Tuesday nights to kind of keep it a little different, mixed up, We had some friends. They came over for dinner one night, and the wife says, so when was your birthday? And I kind of tell her back and forth, and she's in her 50s, I'm in my 30s. Well, I'm on my way to seminary the next day. Here I am. I'm thinking, well, I'm serving the Lord, and, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. My phone rings. It's her. We talk for an hour about horses, because I had a pretty good ride to seminary. Horses, and we were working with kids in children's homes at the time. It's kind of a theme of my life. And we get off the phone, hang up. So I'm at seminary, got to go, and I'm walking into the school, and my phone rings again. It's her, and she's just squalling, just crying uncontrollably. And I said, what's wrong? She said, I put a boy up for adoption, and I think you're him. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So exactly. And so I'm like, beside myself. And so in my mind at this time, I'm like, well, look, this is awesome. I decided I'm going to give my life to God, and God has sent my biological mother. And, I go to visit with her, and I write her this long letter, and I sit down with her, and we're chatting it. And the next day we go to breakfast. We're laughing about how we both put grits on our toast, just all these little things, right? And so for me, it was like, oh my God, this is really happening,
Yeah.
And that night she goes, hey, I've got an idea how we can find out for sure. She said, Georgia has the Georgia Adoption Reunion Registry. You go on and register, and then I'll go on and register. And then they'll just pair us up. And so I went home that night, got on the internet, it was dial-up at the time. And so I sit there and I upload my information, and I'm sitting there waiting by the phone. Nothing happens. And finally she calls. She goes, I found my son. He's in Ohio.
Oh.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Right. So in that moment, what's the thought process?
Dang.
Right. Well, God, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I mean, it was my thought process. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, you mean to tell me, man, like I'm 33. I sold my plumbing company to go into seminary and pastor a church, and this is the shit sandwich I get? Like, nah, man. So
did you take that as a sign that you needed to go find your biological mom?
And then she was dead. Right. The hits just keep on coming.
Well, what road are you trying to lead me down?
Yeah.
That's crazy. And this was another thing, because when listening to some audio about you, when you were having this feeling that something was missing, God left something out, but then you kind of double down and you go into the ministry, the same place that is making you feel like there's something left out of you.